This is CNBC Reports on a Friday. Your first look at the week ahead.
Oh, the great tease, I got to tell you. Good evening, I'm Dennis Kneale. Got a great scoop for you tonight, folks. GM, life after death. We have the secret numbers being tossed around inside General Motors for what the business will look like when it emerges from Chapter 11. The numbers are in a confidential report I got hold of today. It's codenamed Project Maine, and it was put together, as in the state of Maine, and it was put together by GM's financial advisors at Evercore Partners. It maps out the promise of a sleeker, debt-free GM, but it also kind of shows the daunting obstacles on the hard road ahead. Some quick highlights for you. The new GM, and they're saying as of July 31st, this coming, is expected to have equity value of $38 to $48 billion. It'll have total debt of $15 billion. Now, that's far better than the $170 billion of the old GM. GM also expected to run a loss of $17.5 billion this year, even after the bailout, on revenue of $78 billion. The cash flow will be a negative $25.8 billion this year, and it'll take 5 years to turn that into a projected positive cash flow of $8 billion or so. Worse, GM's market share seen as dropping a bit over the next 5 years, about a half a point down to 18%. But here's a bright spot. GM's distressed bonds. They've been trading 11 to 12 cents on the dollar lately, and the report argues the real value is 27 to 36 cents on the dollar, which means you could triple your money if you buy them now. So what's all this mean? Peter Flaherty is with the National Legal and Policy Center, and Peter Delorenzo, that ought to confuse me a lot, is with the AutoExtremist.com. Peter Flaherty. So the new GM has to get $48 billion in equity value they're giving. Okay, but here's the catch. GM would have to hit $80 billion in equity value for taxpayers to recoup their bailout. And GM's all-time high back in 2000 was only $60 billion, and the company was twice as large. Are we going to get hosed here?
Well, Dennis, I think we are going to get hosed. They may have called this thing Project Maine, but I think the company is still in the woods. It might be a good spec play for some people to buy these bonds, but I wouldn't put my retirement money into it. And, of course, there's lots of people who paid 100 cents on the dollar for these bonds, and no matter how well the valuation of the company does, they're still up the creek. They're still up the Saco River.
Right, and may they rest in peace because they got crushed. Peter Delorenzo, then again, you know, GM, that old saddled with that $170 billion in debt and liabilities. New GM, like $15 billion, whole new world, right?
Well, the real key here is right now we're at a 9.5 million unit sales rate for the year. That's down from the artificially increased levels of 16 and 17 million. But we are going to see the sales rate accelerate quite quickly starting in the fall and into next year. And GM, as a reconfigured company, will make money at a 10 million unit sales year, and I expect the sales year to go to 11.5 million, then to 12 to 13 to 14 million in a couple of years. So GM does have a chance to make money.
Yeah, good luck with that. A 40% increase in car sales. So Peter Flaherty, go ahead, Peter.
Well, it's a chance. And when you're talking about these bonds, maybe it's possible now to see a premium if you buy, but all that is dependent upon a valuation based on this company becoming profitable.
Right.
And I think you can make an equally convincing case that this company is going to have a great deal of difficulty becoming profitable. And when it comes to the U.S. taxpayer, you know, they can do as well as anybody can dream, but it doesn't look like we're going to get our money back.
Right. Hey, Peter Delorenzo, the secret report that we got, it shows the government bailout of GM. It runs actually a total of $55 billion, not the $50 billion that gets reported in the press. I'm hearing, though, that the $55 billion that we pumped in, that's the end of it. No mas, no more. Do you think the feds will stick with that?
Yes, I think they do. But, you know, I was going to ask you something. A couple of weeks ago, someone in the Auto Task Force was asked about getting the money back. And I can't recall who it was, but they said, well, we really don't expect at least 20 to 30 billion of it. We don't expect to see that again. So, you know.
And so what do you want to ask me?
I'm just throwing that out because this idea that we're going to get all the money back, that's not going to happen.
Well, I think taxpayers have a big question, and that's if Obama has already communicated to the management of this company and to the union that he's not going to allow them to fail. What kind of management practices do you think that's going to lead to? Do you think that's going to lead to a lot of pressure to be efficient? I don't think so. And,
what do you think, Delorenzo? Answer him.
Yeah, well, you know, we're talking about a fluid model of GM right now. The only thing they've got going is they've got the best products right now in their history, and they've got the best products probably of any domestic automaker in the pipeline. But the big problem for General Motors is convincing the American consumer to give them a closer look. And that's the toughest marketing challenge in automotive history, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. You know, Peter Flaherty, a couple other things. You know, they have them losing market share over the next 5 years. They have their revenue per car going up only a few $100 to the $20,000, $500 range in 5 years. And worse than that, Peter Flaherty, is that it's all based on, this is a best case scenario, and it has U.S. car sales in total going up 60% in 5 years. What are the chances of that happening, Peter Flaherty?
Well, I'm as hopeful as anyone that as we come out of this downturn, there'll be a pent-up demand for cars. But we've had all these rosy scenarios for years, and that's what has gotten GM into the situation it's in now. And it's too bad that GM doesn't have a real ally in the White House. Now, Peter pointed out that GM has some pretty good products. I rented one this week. He's right. But if the administration insists that they build electric cars or more fuel-efficient cars or cars that people won't buy, they're not doing them any favor.
Peter Flaherty, did you just say it's too bad GM doesn't have an ally in the White House? Are you being ironic saying one thing but you mean the opposite? Because they just got $55 billion. It seems like a pretty good ally to me.
Well, they have an ally in a sense of a master, and the master has a political agenda, and that's too bad.
Yeah. All right. Peters, Flaherty, and Delorenzo, thanks for being with us tonight. Very much appreciate it. Have a good weekend, guys.
You too.